In the heart of the Arizona desert, where the sun scorches and the law forgets, one man returns every year. Not for fame, not for revenge, but for a promise. A man who needs no introduction, and a gang that doesn't know who they're messing with. This isn't just a brawl. This is a lesson no one dares forget. The Arizona desert stretches endlessly like a massive scar carved by nature across America. Charred stretches of sand, speckled with cactus and jagged stones, lie still beneath the 40-degree heat. Not a single tree, not a sign of life. Only a thin black road slicing through the dead land. A fragile line between what remains and what's long gone. The sky is deep blue, cloudless, the sun blazing down as if it had chosen this place to unleash its wrath. The air trembles from the heat, creating waves of distortion that make the horizon shimmer like a fever dream. Along that highway, every few dozen miles, there's a roadside stop, places where drifting souls pause to rest, breathe in some conditioned air, and sip cold water just to prove they still exist. Maggie's pit stop is one of them. A small yellow diner with paint faded by time, a corrugated tin roof warped by sandstorms, and a flickering neon sign now only reads Aggie's after sundown. The diner stands alone in the desert like a barren oasis. Not beautiful, but a vital sliver of life amid a sea of death. Despite its deterioration over the decades, it remains a key rest stop for truckers, risk-taking tourists, and desert drifters. Maggie, a 60-year-old woman with silver-white hair and faded blue eyes, has run this place for 3 decades, ever since her husband, a Vietnam War veteran, passed and left her the land and the diner. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of time, frying oil, meat grease, and stale cigarettes. Cracked leather booths, sticky tabletops, and a ceiling fan that spins sluggishly, like it's on its last legs. Yet somehow, amidst the decay, there's still order. An unspoken law. This place is safe, if you know your place. A dusty jukebox in the corner crackles out Johnny Cash's Ghost Riders in the Sky, the static blending with the twang, like ghost cowboys are riding through the desert sky. 3 men sip coffee. One wears a Federal Trucking Company uniform, another sports a sun-faded blue shirt, and the third, an old man in a cap that reads Vietnam Veteran, its letters nearly erased. Damn weather, the trucker grumbles, wiping sweat from his brow. Thermometer hit 115 when I pulled up. Cabin air felt like an oven. Still better than last winter, the old man replies, sipping black coffee. Snow up to your knees. The roads were frozen solid. Bob Peterson got stuck in his rig for 3 days before they found him. Maggie places a slice of apple pie in front of them. If you old men keep complaining about the weather, I'm adding a whining surcharge. She smiles, wrinkles deepening around her eyes. Arizona doesn't have seasons, just hot and hotter. Suddenly, the sound of an engine rumbles from afar. The conversation halts. It's not the familiar hum of a truck or tourist car. It's a V8, powerful, menacing, roaring through the still desert like the growl of an ancient beast. A shiny black Mustang appears through the heat haze, materializing like a mirage becoming real. Sunlight glints off its polished body, casting sharp reflections like moonlight on water. The engine gives a final growl and dies. The car parks are at the far end of the lot, separate from the trucks and dusty pickups. The black Mustang sits alone at the edge, as if it too knows to keep its distance. Its body reflects the blistering sun like a mirror, So polished is the cloudless sky that it reflects upside down. No decals, no vanity plates, and maybe that simplicity is precisely what draws the eye, the kind of allure born from something that doesn't belong here. "That's a beauty," the old man murmured, eyes fixed on the window. "'69 Mustang Mach 1, if I'm not mistaken, restored to perfection." "The driver's more interesting," Maggie replies softly. Her tone has changed. No longer teasing, just respect, laced with unease. The diner door swings wide. Hot desert air blasts in like a wall of heat, and with it a figure appears. Tall, solid, silent. He enters with footsteps that make no sound, yet every conversation in the room falls to whispers, then silence. A wide-brimmed brown cowboy hat hides his face, leaving only a chiseled jaw and tightly pressed lips visible. A worn leather jacket hangs on broad shoulders, not for style, but because of time and the long roads behind him. Beneath it, a plain white tee, faded jeans, and weathered black cowboy boots. No one dares meet his gaze, but everyone sneaks a glance. This man carries a certain energy, not arrogance, not menace, but the raw, focused presence of power held in control. He chooses a table in the corner, back to the wall, eyes on the door and parking lot. The position of a man who knows how to watch and never stops being ready. Maggie approaches, sets a cold glass of water before him. "Been a while," she says calmly. The man looks up, and in that moment the shadow beneath the brim fades, revealing deep blue eyes, sharp as blades, keen as a hawk, and ancient as the desert itself. "Maggie," he replies, his voice low and thunderous like distant storm clouds. "Steak, medium, mashed potatoes, and green beans?" she asks. He gives a slight nod. "Lemon iced tea?" Another nod. Maggie returns to the bar with a quiet smile. She relays the order to Earl, the old cook of nearly 20 years, who's been peeking through the kitchen window. "Chuck's back," Earl whispers, grabbing a towel. "Thought he was gone for good." "He always comes back," Maggie replies. "Same day, every year. I saved him the best cut." No one knows who the man is, where he comes from, or where he's going. They only know his name, Chuck, and that you don't ask questions. You don't start trouble. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't need to. His presence is like gravity, unseen, undeniable. Chuck Norris. Then comes the growl, from afar. It sounds like war drums. 6 massive motorcycles, black metal beasts, rusted frames, pipes roaring like fireworks, burst from the desert haze like wild animals loosed from cages. They tear around the lot, shredding the peaceful afternoon. A bald man with a skull tattoo revs hard, kicking up clouds of dust. Another, built like a bear, laughs out loud. A beauty like that, and no one's watching it. 3 vintage Harley-Davidsons with custom engines howling louder than hell. A pitch-black Kawasaki with fiery red decals. 2 sleek black Ducatis, each marked with a skull and crossbones, the emblem of the Reaper's Gang, infamous for robbery, assault, even murder across the Badlands between Arizona and New Mexico. They park in a wide line, deliberately blocking the Mustang's exit. They don't head for the diner. They circle the car, leering like wolves eyeing a wounded animal. Inside, the clatter of utensils stops. Maggie, silver-haired and small, stops pouring coffee. She knows this type. They don't come to eat. They came to prove that their law is stronger than this place's law. A grizzled trucker mutters, but no one moves. Everyone knows. Do not engage. "Reapers," the old vet hisses, disgusted. "They killed my friend last year, hijacked his rig outside Phoenix, pushed him off a cliff." "Shut it," the trucker beside him warns. "If you want to live, look down and stay quiet." Maggie heads to the kitchen, clutching the tray. "Earl, call the cops," she says. Earl shakes his head, worry in his eyes. "Fastest response is 40 minutes. We're in the middle of nowhere, Maggie." She exhales, eyes scanning the diner. Her customers, mostly elderly, a few tired truckers, and one small family with 2 children huddled in the far corner. And then, Chuck. Only one man is still eating. Sitting at the corner table, he doesn't flinch at the roar of engines. He calmly cuts a piece of steak, brings it to his mouth, chews slowly. The setting sun slants through the blinds, casting shadows over his face, leaving only the firm jaw and steady lips visible. Broad shoulders beneath a dusty brown coat. Thick hands, sinewy fingers. A man who doesn't need to speak to be understood. He doesn't need to turn. He knows what's happening, from the vibrations in the floor, the clang of metal, and the eyes of everyone in the room glued to the window. The old men and truckers glance at Chuck, then at each other. They don't know him, but they know. If things go south, he's their only hope. None of the 6 bikers understood why the wind suddenly died, as if even the desert itself was holding its breath. The man in the wide-brimmed hat stepped down the diner's front steps. The blazing sunlight didn't slow him down, not even half a beat. Beneath that dusted leather coat was a solid frame, not the sculpted muscles of a fitness model, but the hardened body of a man who had lived, fought, and survived. He said nothing. He simply walked toward the black Mustang, where 6 men hovered like flies around fresh meat. The sunlight beamed directly into Chuck's face, but he didn't squint. His gait was powerful, steady. Not the walk of someone picking a fight, but of someone moving straight toward where they intend to be, no matter who stands in the way. Inside the diner, everyone watched, breathless. Maggie placed her hand on her chest. Her heart pounded. The family, with 2 kids, shrank deeper into the corner booth. The father held both children tightly. The truckers, worried but transfixed. They'd heard stories about men like Chuck, but never seen one in action. Only the old man with the Vietnam veteran cap was different. He knew exactly what was about to happen, and in his eyes there was no fear, only expectation. The platinum-haired biker, Snake, was the first to notice Chuck approaching. He stopped laughing, stood upright, alert like a rattlesnake sensing danger. He'd seen all types, gangsters, cops, soldiers, angry locals, but this man, this one coming toward them, was different. "Hey, boys," Snake said, trying to sound casual, but his voice dropped an octave. "Looks like the owner just showed up." The other 5 stopped what they were doing and turned. Their reactions varied. One sneered, one tensed up, one took an unconscious step back. One of them moved forward, a man with a long scar running from cheek to chin. He twirled a screwdriver in his hand, smirking. "Yours?" he asked mockingly, eyes narrowed in calculation. No answer, just footsteps, stopping a few meters from the group. Another, the one with chains wrapped around his arms, laughed loudly. "What's this? You here to claim your baby back? Or you gonna beg us for mercy, old man?" Still no reply. The eyes beneath the cowboy hat glanced over each of them, quick, efficient, like measurements. Height, weight, reflex time. And, in a way no one else noticed, Chuck had already drawn the battlefield map in 3 seconds, Chuck mentally calculated. The first, Snake, the leader, sly, dangerous, top priority. The second, Chains, large build, powerful but slow. The third, thin guy with the screwdriver, agile but weak. The other three? Just backup. Not a real threat. The Reaper's leader stepped up, his breath thick with smoke and arrogance. He exhaled a puff directly into Chuck's face. Listen, old man, I'll ask you one last time. Walk away, or we'll send you to the ER. The answer came, not in words. Chuck Norris tilted his head. His gaze pierced through skin and soul. Then he spoke, quiet but clear enough for all of them to hear. You picked the wrong car. A heartbeat's silence. And the wrong man. Silence stretched, half a heartbeat long. Then the one with the chains yelled, "Get him!" The first rushed in, screwdriver ready, fast, but without strategy. Fatal mistake. Chuck spun. His arm snapped out like a spring. He grabbed the biker's wrist before the weapon could drop. A light twist, crack, a dry, sickening snap. The biker screamed, collapsed to his knees, and dropped the weapon. The other 5 froze. Their minds hadn't yet caught up to what had just happened. Chuck stood tall, expressionless, then spoke again. 5 left. Wind swept sand across the parking lot. Inside the diner, no one breathed. Maggie clenched her hands together, sweat dripping even though the air conditioning was still running. The second man roared, swinging a chain at Chuck like an iron python. But before the chain could touch the skin, Chuck had already closed the distance. He wrapped the chain around his own arm and yanked hard. The biker stumbled, lost balance, and that was all Chuck needed. A knee strike, perfectly placed, sent the man flying backward like a punching bag. He hit the ground and was out cold before he landed. 4. 2 bikers remained. One, a giant with tattoos snaking down his left arm. The other, a wiry man with a brass padlock fitted to his gloves. They exchanged glances. Then they attacked together, hoping numbers would work. The giant charged like a bear, trying to crush Chuck with sheer mass. The smaller man zigzagged, aiming to flank from the side. A simple tactic, effective against most opponents. Chuck just smirked. A blade-thin smile. As the giant came within one step, Chuck didn't retreat as expected. Instead, he sidestepped with startling agility, placed a hand on the giant's back, and used the man's own momentum against him. The biker couldn't stop. He barreled straight into the side of the black Mustang with a loud thud. The car barely flinched. The man crumpled, his skull bouncing off the metal. 3. The wiry one was now alone, confused, but still trying to summon courage. He pulled out a butterfly knife from his back pocket, twirling it theatrically. Clearly, he'd practiced this move hundreds of times for show. "Wanna hear how I got this scar?" He grinned, trying to fill the silence with hollow bravado. Chuck said nothing. He stood still, as relaxed as someone waiting for a bus, not someone facing a knife. The biker lunged, slashing wildly, hoping to distract and find an opening. Chuck only needed to shift a few inches. Short, exact steps, like a dancer weaving through others on stage. The blade cut through nothing but air. By the 6th strike, Chuck had seen enough. He caught the man's wrist mid-swing. His left hand grabbed the collar. Then, with the gentleness of lifting a child, Chuck hoisted the man off the ground, spun, and hurled him into a metal trash bin 3 meters away. Clang! The man hit the bin. It toppled over, scattering debris and scraps. 2. Snake and Travis stood frozen. Confidence had completely drained from their faces. Snake reached for his phone, hoping to call for backup, but Chuck was already there. He didn't run. He didn't leap. He simply moved faster than the eye could follow. His hand seized Snake's wrist, squeezed hard. The phone dropped. At the same time, Chuck's knee drove into Snake's face with a sickening crack, the sound of a nose breaking. Snake crumpled, groaning, clutching his face. 1. Travis, the last one, stumbled back. He reached toward his bike. "Don't," Chuck said, his voice unexpectedly gentle. Travis froze, rigid as stone. "If you run now, you'll come back with more, and that'll be your next mistake." Chuck stepped closer. Not fast, not aggressive, just inevitable, like a rising tide. Travis had seen enough. This wasn't a man, this was a force. We didn't know it was your car." Travis stammered, his eyes darting to the long scratch on the black Mustang. Chuck stopped. He was just one arm's length away. The deep blue eyes beneath the brim were sharp as razors. "That was your first mistake," he said, his voice like crushed stone. "Second was thinking numbers would intimidate me. And the third." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. He just stared. Travis breathed heavily, sweat dripping down his face. "We won't come back, I swear." "Good." That was all Chuck said before turning his back and walking to the Mustang. Travis stood there, legs trembling, unable to move an inch. The desert air grew thick, heavy, as if the very pressure had changed. Inside the diner, no one moved. A child whispered to her mother, "Did you see him beat all the bad guys, Mommy?" Her voice full of awe. The mother just hugged her tighter, eyes still fixed on Chuck. "Angel or demon?" a man whispered to the Vietnam vet. "Sometimes," the old man replied. "We need someone who walks the line between—" Chuck inspected the Mustang. A long scratch marred the passenger side, deep enough to expose the bare metal beneath the black finish. He touched it gently, as if examining a wound. No anger, just acceptance. The kind only a man used to scars could have. He opened the door, retrieved a small bag from the back seat. Inside, a compact repair kit. He pulled out a bottle of polish and a soft cloth, then started working on the scratch. Maggie took a deep breath, then stepped outside. She carried a fresh glass of iced tea. Her footsteps were light, as though not to disturb the calm. "You shouldn't be out in the sun too long," she said, handing the drink to Chuck. He looked at her for a moment, then took it. "Thanks, Maggie." "They'll come back, you know," she said, glancing at Travis dragging Snake toward a bike. Around them, the others were slowly getting up, groaning and muttering curses. Chuck nodded, still polishing the car. "This time, there'll be more," she added. "I know." "Maybe you should leave," Maggie offered, her voice tense. "Staying here just—" "I don't run, Maggie." Chuck looked up, steady eyes. "Never have." She stared at him for a long moment, then sighed. "Still the same Chuck I remember, stubborn as the desert." She smiled faintly. "I'll make you something to eat. You'll need strength if you're planning to." "I'm not planning anything," Chuck replied, tightening the cap on the polish. "But if they come back—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. She understood. She nodded and walked back into the diner. As the door closed behind her, one of the truckers asked, "What the hell just happened?" "A man just taught 6 others a lesson," she answered, "and we were lucky enough to witness a living legend." "What legend?" the trucker asked, intrigued. The Vietnam vet spoke up. "Chuck Norris, Ranger, Delta Force, a living legend of American Special Forces. The man even death checks under his bed at night. The trucker's eyes widened. You mean the real Chuck Norris? I thought he was just a myth. No, the old man smiled. The myth is what people tell about him. But sometimes the truth is scarier than the legend. Dusk. The sun, blood red, hung low on the horizon. No wind, an empty parking lot, but in the distance, a rising cloud of dust. Maggie was cleaning up when she heard it. Engines. Not one. Dozens. Then, maybe 100. The windows rattled. A coffee cup fell from her hand, shattered. The regulars stood, eyes fixed on the window. A swarm of bikers rolled in like locusts, reaper jackets, black flags, all armed, 60 men, just as Travis had promised. And Travis, on a new bike, rode at the front, his arm bandaged, his eyes demonic. The engines screamed, tearing through the desert's silence, shaking the earth like a low earthquake. A warband on steel beasts, weapons glinting in the last rays of sunlight. Knives, chains, batons, even holstered guns. They stopped 50 meters from the diner, lined up like soldiers. Travis turned to a burly man beside him, with a thick beard and a snake tattoo wrapped around his neck. Inside, the air froze. The family with children had long left. Only elderly patrons and truckers remained. Maggie, Earl, and 2 servers stood behind the bar. Call the police, Earl, Maggie urged, voice trembling. Earl held the phone, shook his head. No signal. Towers still down from last week's storm. All eyes turned to Chuck. He sat, knife and fork still in hand. Again. He sighed. Soft wear, but heavy. He stood. This time no one dared move. Maggie stayed behind the bar, eyes wide. As Chuck stepped outside, he didn't just face a gang, he faced a pack of wild animals, and they didn't know that this was where the real legend would begin. The sky turned blood red, a cinematic backdrop for the man standing alone in front of the diner. Before him, a snarl of engines, leather jackets, metal chains, 60 bikers growling like caged wolves. Chuck didn't look worried. He didn't even look tense. Instead, he slowly took off his worn leather jacket, folded it neatly, and laid it across a wooden chair by the entrance. Then he removed his hat, revealing streaked brown hair and a face carved by years of storms. His eyes still sharp, like cold steel. Travis rode forward, stopping about 20 meters from Chuck. You know why we're back, don't you? He shouted, his voice echoing across the desert. Chuck didn't answer. He simply stood, hands at his sides, feet rooted like stone. You don't stand a chance, old man, Travis bellowed. 60 of us, and every one of us wants a piece of you. The wind kicked up. A sudden gust swirled dust into the air. The sun dipped lower as if it wanted to hide from the coming storm. Then Chuck spoke, his voice deep, controlled, carrying effortlessly over the noise. Every one of you still has a choice. Turn around, leave this place, and never come back to Maggie's pit stop. Laughter erupted from the gang. Engines revved. Chuck didn't blink. But if you stay, he continued, know this, you didn't come here to win. You came here to learn. Travis spat into the dirt and barked the order. Get him! 60 engines roared at once, a thunderous charge. The earth shook beneath them. Dust rose like a wave crashing forward. Chuck didn't move. He stood calm, took one deep breath like a warrior about to enter the ring. The first wave came. 10 bikers. They leapt off their bikes, weapons drawn, chains, knives, steel pipes. But not a single one landed a blow. In 5 seconds they were scattered across the sand, groaning, twitching, or completely still. Chuck moved like a desert storm. Fast, precise, unstoppable. Every strike was surgical, every movement efficient. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Then came the second wave. 20 bikers from all sides. A coordinated ambush. Chuck was already ready. He spun, dodged, countered, turning the assault into a martial arts masterclass that even Hollywood couldn't choreograph. One swung a knife. Chuck seized his wrist, twisted, snap. 2 more charged at once. Chuck sidestepped, letting them crash into each other. 3 tried to form a circle. Chuck moved through them like wind, a ghost striking knees, jaws, ribs, until all 3 crumpled. From a distance, Travis watched, eyes wide, disbelief etched on his bruised face. 1 man against 60, and winning. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The ground in front of the diner now resembled a war zone. Dozens of bodies littered the lot, moaning, writhing, or silent. Bikes lay toppled, smashed, or hurled aside, some so far they looked launched by catapults. Chuck stood alone, blood on his knuckles, scratches on his cheek and arms, but not tired, not even breathing hard. He brushed dust from his shoulder, walked calmly through the carnage. As he approached, Travis tried to crawl backward. He was shaking. 3 mistakes, Travis. Chuck's voice was cool, almost casual. 1, you came back. 2, you brought more men. 3, he paused. You thought numbers meant power. Travis had no reply, just wide, stunned eyes. Chuck crouched, his face inches from Travis's. Remember this, he said, his tone suddenly darker. Numbers don't mean a damn thing. That's lesson 1. Lesson 2, no one's unbeatable, not even me. But, his eyes flared cold, not by the likes of you. Chuck stood, dusted himself off, and walked back toward the Mustang, scratched, dented, but proud, a warrior's chariot. He turned once, looked toward Maggie. She didn't say anything, just nodded, solemn, understanding. Chuck replied, tone even. Next time, don't let them bring so many. It gets tiring. The sun had vanished, leaving only twilight hues of purple across the desert sky. Stars twinkled like diamonds above a land still holding its breath. Inside the diner, the silence hung heavy. Maggie brewed fresh coffee, her hands still trembling. Earl stood at the window, watching the scattered gang crawl toward their bikes. They won't be back, he muttered. Not after that. Chuck returned to his corner booth, a new glass of iced tea in hand. His jacket is back on, hat resting on the table. He looked like he'd just come in from a walk, not from a battle with 60 men. The truckers sat quietly across the room, watching him with reverence. You know, one finally spoke, I don't think I'll ever forget today. No one will, the old vet replied. That's how legends are born. Maggie walked over to Chuck's table, carrying a plate of warm apple pie topped with vanilla ice cream. I didn't order dessert, Chuck noted, though he made no move to refuse it. On the house, Maggie smiled softly. And, thank you. They won't come back. The Reapers have terrorized this place for too long. Chuck gave a slight nod, cut a piece of pie with his fork. There was a brief silence, then Maggie spoke again, more gently now. Why do you always come back here, Chuck? She asked. Same day, every year, for the last 15 years. Chuck looked up, his eyes distant, as if seeing something long gone. Because of a promise, he answered simply. A promise to who? To your husband. Maggie froze, her eyes widened. Jack? She breathed the name. You knew Jack? Chuck nodded slowly. Delta Force, 1985. Baghdad. I was his team leader. Maggie sank into the seat across from him. Her hands trembled as she placed them on the table. He never talked about what happened, she whispered. He only said the desert took too many. Chuck stared down at the pie. When he spoke, his voice was deep, heavy with memory. We were ambushed, outnumbered, outgunned. Jack was wounded, but he kept fighting, to buy time for the evac team. He didn't make it out. Maggie blinked rapidly, eyes welling up. Chuck continued, calm but reverent. Before he died, he gave me this. Chuck reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small metal tag on a chain. And he asked me for one thing. Make sure you're okay. I didn't know. Maggie's voice cracked. I didn't know anyone knew. He said you'd be stubborn, Chuck half smiled. Said you'd stay, keep the place running, make pie no soldier could ever forget. Maggie laughed through tears. Sounds like him. I promised him I'd check in every year, same day, just to be sure. Chuck took a sip of iced tea. Maggie wiped her eyes, looked around at the diner. Now calm again, though the scent of battle still lingered in the dust outside. All these years, you never said anything, she said. Chuck shrugged. Didn't need to. You were doing fine, didn't want to interfere. And if I hadn't been fine? Chuck looked her in the eye. Then it wouldn't have just been a visit. She smiled again, this time fully. Thank you, Chuck, for the pie, and for everything else. Chuck stood, placed his hat back on. Outside, the desert night was falling. The wind had returned, cooler now, gentler. Stars shimmered overhead like silent witnesses to everything that had happened. Chuck walked to the Mustang. It still bore the scar from earlier, but it was cleaner now, less angry, more like a medal. He opened the door, paused, looked once more toward the diner. Maggie stood at the entrance, arms crossed, watching him. I told Jack I'd take care of you, Chuck said quietly. Guess I still am. And I told Jack, Maggie replied, that if he ever saw you again, to buy you that damn slice of pie. They both chuckled. Chuck stepped into the Mustang. The engine purred to life, deep and steady. He drove away, dust trailing behind like a ghostly ribbon. And, in the silence that followed, the neon sign flickered. Only Aggie's lighting the night, just as it always had. But everyone inside knew. He didn't stay for applause. He didn't wait for thanks. He just kept driving. Because justice doesn't wear a badge, and legends don't need permission. He'll be back, same day, next year. Some men vanish into the desert, others become part of it.